Hello everybody, just a quickie. I did get the chance as I was going around today to listen to the Conspeared podcast about Making a Murderer #2, and also had the pleasure, I would have to say, of joining in on a chat with Eric Jose and 8 other people on his Eric Jose on Doctor Who channel. Included in the chat was a self-proclaimed guilter. The Conspeared couple, they think that as truthers that we are wrong in believing that Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey are innocent. They think that we are wrong, and they point out some of the things that we do wrong in their opinion, like having, as far as they're concerned, an unhealthy interest in the case, bordering on obsession and basically becoming a cult, and that we need to get a life, and that there are far more important things that we should be concerning ourselves with. So they think that we're wrong, and these are some of their reasons, which is basically, if you put 2 and 2 together, they're saying that because of those reasons they've just cited, because of what we believe, we must be wrong in believing that Stephen and Brendan are innocent, therefore they must be guilty. I mean, why else bring up such stuff? You know, and they question the fact that we get in touch with other people, such as themselves, who say that Stephen Avery is guilty. And that's another thing that we do wrong according to them. And then, obviously, one of the big reasons why Stephen is guilty is because of his past crimes from when he was a teenager, but also from the fact that apparently Chuck and Barb and Earl have all had charges against them because at times they're not best equipped to deal with domestic or marital arguments. So that must be another reason why Stephen is guilty, because of that. Are you following their logic here? I'm sure you are. It's pretty twisted, but let's just plough on. Another thing they point out in the podcast is that Laurie, Steve's wife, married Pete Dassey. Well, first of all, that in a rural countryside place is not unusual, that people know one another. And I would just ask them if they've ever considered the Bible. The Bible obviously is a whole collection, dozens of books, the smallest of which is the Book of Ruth. I would strongly advise anybody who hasn't read the Bible to start off at the Book of Ruth. In fairness, the Bible doesn't always present women in a very good light. They're often seen as the scheming ones. So everybody, if you have never read the Book of Ruth, a very interesting book to read, particularly the detail of the kinsman redeemer. And that's all I'm going to say about Pete and Laurie. There is no problem whatsoever. Again, this is not something that makes Stephen guilty. It's just ridiculous. They also mention Kathleen Zellner and the fact that she does a lot of tweeting, and that she's only taken on the case for the publicity. Again, what's wrong with Kathleen Zellner taking on the case? She took on the case because she is successful. One of the guys that prevented Deborah Kakach, the coroner, from going out to the salvage yard was Bob Ziegelbauer, or whatever his name is. I'm reminded that in one newspaper article, he is quoted as saying that he knows that Stephen Avery is guilty by the look in his eye. It seems that Stephen Avery is pretty guilty because of all of this incriminating evidence against him. Not least, as I say, the fact that we have got it completely wrong. Oh, and another thing they mention is that obviously Steve at one time was actually engaged with Sandra Greenman. Sandra is still a close friend, but there must be something odd there because she's a bit older than Steve. Again, another reason why Steve must be guilty. One of the guilters I was speaking with last night claimed that if the blood had been planted in the RAV4, then they would have done a better job of it. Therefore, it couldn't have been planted. Where that logic comes from, anybody's guess. And another reason why Steve must be guilty, is because making a murderer is so biased. And you know, I would ask this of any and every guilter out there. Do you truly believe that Stephen Avery is guilty, or do you simply want him to be guilty? Have you got that prejudice against him, whereby you just cannot see the wood for the trees? And that Stephen Avery is he's just too bad a person. He couldn't possibly be innocent because he's just such a bad person. And I would say, you know, when has any truther ever claimed that Stephen Avery is a saint? Nobody. Another thing that guilters can't seem to accept, is that the state could not have got it wrong. It's unfathomable to them that the state could possibly have got it wrong, either accidentally or, as we suspect, deliberately. Another thing that they go on about is the hiding of the RAV4. I don't believe that the RAV4 was hidden at all. I think it stood out like a sore thumb with all the bonnet and bits of stuff on it. And the reason it was made to stand out like a sore thumb was so that Pam Sturm could find it quite easily within 20 minutes. Another problem I think that guilters have is the fact that I'm sure most of us are used to defendants getting up on a stand. Defendants that are clearly guilty and blatantly lying. And they just can't fathom that the police might get up and take the oath to solemnly swear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing like the truth. Because that's exactly what they did. You know, quite a lot of guilters are quite magnanimous about the fact that, well, yes, maybe Stephen Avery does deserve a retrial. As truthers, we are far, far beyond that. Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey should never, ever have been put on trial in the first place. The memory of Teresa Holbach has been completely viled by the actions of the investigators, Manitowoc and Calumet County. They have completely disgraced Teresa's memory. I'm reminded of some words by Dave Brigotka that he sent me. They accuse us of standing on graves and asking questions as if we shouldn't. Well, it's not going to change. We're just going to march on, because Kathleen Zellner has exposed completely the rubbish and the lies of Ken Kratz and the state. I've yet to hear any guilter explain how a bullet that the Dr. Jensen, he testified for the state that the bullet item FL was the cause of Teresa's death because it entered her skull. Fact, not fiction. That is a fact. That is what the state claimed. Since when, in Manitowoc, do they have the reverse of Pinocchio? Pinocchio was made a wooden toy and became a real boy. What are you trying to say? That in Manitowoc, not only do you have aliens, that you can defy gravity, but also that real people suddenly become wooden? We're not going anywhere, but we are going to do as Eric Jose suggests, and we're going to be polite and sensible about this. We're not going to call names. Anyway, I've kept you long enough. One or two things to think about. It's, as I say, it's very strange how they like to ridicule us as if we're wrong. Therefore, as I say, Steve must be guilty because we must be wrong because of the things that we do. No, that is, as Dr. Spock would say, illogical. Bye for now.